Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Citrus Corner. I got my brother and co-partner with me today, Mr. Vaskai, host of Freshly Squeezed. We're going to dive into kind of a sticky situation right now going on with Disney's annual passes. Let's take it off coming up on Citrus Corner. And we're back. Welcome, everyone, to Citrus Corner. I'm your host, George. And to all who come to this happy conversation, welcome. Orange Grove 55 is your channel for the best juicy and even sometimes sticky Disney news, rumors, and info. Joining me today, I have my brother and partner in crime today to talk some Disney news with me, and possibly my own personal Disney news, if I may say so. But joining me today is Mr. Vaskai, host of Freshly Squeezed. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Happy to be part of this happy conversation for sure. Hey, you know what? This is something that I've gone back and forth on myself, so I'm happy to be part of this process here. So when you told me about the topic, I'm like, I'm there. So I'm very much happy to be here. And if you want to interact with me, you can do that right there at Vashguy, just like it's spelled right there on Twitter for the most robust conversation available, right? Yes. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. There you go, right there.
All right. So we are in the turnstiles and we're raring ready to go. And of course, right now, to get in through those turnstiles, you either have to have a base ticket or an annual pass. And right now, a lot of Disney fans aren't really too happy with the annual passes right now on both coasts. For many different reasons. In particular, more with the Magic Keys. But I mean, there are people even kind of considering on letting their annual passes end for Walt Disney World as well. And unfortunately, I am one because I have the highest tier annual pass at Walt Disney World, the Incredipass. And it was worth it in that time.
Yeah.
But now I'm considering, with the amount of time that I'm there, which I usually go one, maybe two times a year, but I go in bulk. So I go like an extensive 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
But I only do about 10 days at the parks. So when you kind of weigh that in with a 10-day base ticket, you're saving about $600 or $700 in the long run by just doing a base ticket. And one may argue you save 10 to 20% on food and merchandise, but depending on how much you eat or where you eat, you're only saving a couple $100. So you're still forking out an extra $1,000 for the annual pass.
Yeah, and do you get any discounts on hotel rooms or anything?
No, except when they have like a special deal. Like if you're an annual pass holder, they had that where you save up to $500 a night on select hotels, or a percentage off, but it's not around the clock yearly thing. Like it could be between like this time and this time.
Yeah.
From spring to summer, you can save, which it does save money in the long run. But is it worth it to then spend all that money waiting to see if even Disney comes up with a deal like that? And especially in which I didn't get to bring it up when we were talking about the quarterly earnings, but Disney is even having a special deal. It's 25% off hotel stay if you are a Disney Plus subscriber. So that kind of ties into, if you're a subscriber to Disney Plus, but you could also get 25% off. And it makes me wonder if that's the route that they're going to go forward to rather than an annual pass holder.
Yeah, it might be. It might be, at least right now, especially with the 3-year buy-ins coming up right in November. Yeah. So there's some deals to be had if you look in the right places. But That's interesting. So how many days would you say you spend in the parks in a given year?
I would say just Disney World.
Yeah, just Walt Disney World.
Just Walt Disney World. Well, this year would only be 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're talking about potentially $600 in savings per pass.
Yeah.
That's kind of where it's at. That was the numbers that I came up with as well.
And then where I'm hesitant on giving it up or keeping it is because as of right now, they're not selling any of the annual, well, the higher tier, in credit passes. So it's almost like I'm paying Disney just to secure my spot with my annual pass. Because once you let it go, who knows when you could even get it back, if it'll even come back. So it's
Right.
almost like you're grandfathered in.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they've put out surveys to that effect. They've kind of noticed that, oh, look, if we stop selling annual passes, that increases demand for those passes. So it's like, they want to have people kind of not be annual pass holders because of the valuation, but they incentivize people at least staying annual pass holders or annual pass holders, or getting annual passes when they do become available, because they do come on and off. They create demand by limiting supply. And that's what we've been seeing across the board with a lot of Disney's programs. But in this particular case, that might not be the demand that you want necessarily. So I know that's kind of going through your head. It just really comes down to how married are you to the pass. I mean, quite honestly, even right? So we live next to Disneyland. I mean, closer than maybe you live to Walt Disney World, right? We live in Arizona, so it's like 6-hour drives away. And we used to have annual passes. I mean, I had an annual pass for like 20 years of my life until it got to a point where it was just like, we are not going at all with the frequency required to actually, have this pass kind of pay for itself. We're kind of always in that kind of red zone. And it's like, it doesn't quite make sense to do that now with the reservation system. That's a completely different deal. I don't even know if we would even be able to take advantage of the pass in the way that we would want to with this whole thing and how it's all kind of worked out. So we made that decision like 10 years ago that we wouldn't, that we wouldn't be annual pass holders, and that we would go and just buy tickets just like everybody else, and we've been able to save a lot of money doing that. So, and that's with how close we are here and not having to pay for flights. And that's what I kind of wanted to ask you as well. How much are flights from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where you are, to Orlando, Florida, or even Anaheim, California?
Well, I remember when I used to fly, because I always fly Southwest. Call me frugal, but it's the cheapest, and you get free baggage.
I like Southwest. No, I like Southwest. I think it's put out a good product. I like it. I ain't no frugal. That's just being smart.
Yep. And especially with the prices that you pay for Disney, it's like, to get there,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to put out $2,000 to $3,000 just to get to Disney.
Yeah, 100%.
And then include paying for baggage. Yeah. So to answer your question, starting out, it used to be relatively like on the lower side. It used to be like $90 one way, per person. And I mean, now, like prices have gone up quite a bit. So I'd say from Pittsburgh to Orlando, I'd say because we're a family of 3, I'd say it's about between, depending on when I purchased the tickets, $400 to $600 round trip for the 3 of us.
Okay.
For California, it's about $400 to $600 per person.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. So that's
also Southwest.
Wow.
Yeah. So California is a little bit more of a longer stretch, and I know, with Citrus Corner, I'm an aficionado, so to speak, for Walt Disney World, but to speak on Disneyland's behalf, I was even contemplating on whether or not I wanted to renew my Dream Key, because I even spend even less time a year going to Disneyland.
Right.
because of that matter with the traveling and the how much it costs and what have you, and
100%.
it's across country. But apparently Disney did that for me when they're not letting anybody renew when that
That's
time comes.
that's the word on the street. That's the allegation. We will see whether or not they will actually go ahead and implement that policy on a larger scale once those renewal dates come up in like August or whatever, when they debuted the Magic Key program in full. Listen, I was gonna say that marrying yourself to one resort might not be maybe the best way to go. Simply
Yeah.
because if you have the flexibility of saving money on a Walt Disney World vacation by maybe not being annual pass holders, and but you're still going like 10, 15 days or so, then that's money that you could save for potentially a Disneyland trip.
Exactly. And
You
that's
know,
what the numbers I was crunching in my head, because I'm thinking to put out essentially almost 1300 is how much it is for the Incredipass.
yeah,
And and when I crunch the numbers as far as like how much I would save, it's 10% off of dining. So if you do a sit down dinner at Walt Disney World, you can arguably say, maybe 100 to $150 per sit down meal, depending on how many people we have, which is three. And then you add that all up, times that by 14 nights, for that's how long that we're there,
hmm
and then divide that by the 10%.
hmm
We're only saving between $250 and $300.
yeah,
So if I didn't have the pass, I'd have to put out that $250 to $300 that I wouldn't be saving, but I'd be saving again almost $1,000 from the pass itself.
that's what I'm saying. So it's like, that was the conclusion that we made. Was it was just like we're putting out all this money for this annual pass, these annual passes, but to kind of make that up on our visitation schedule and some of the perks involved, it's like it doesn't make fiscal sense. It just doesn't, it's just we would be better off with tickets and not having to be, I don't know, not having to be married to any particular resort.
Yeah.
It's because they're so expensive. The upfront cost is just enormous, right? And it's like, and you could spread out those costs and stuff like that, and all that.
And and then I started thinking, and then I'm paying almost 1,400 for the Magic Key. So when you add both of them up together for a year, that's more than what I paid for the Premier Passport that
Yeah,
allows you to visit both coasts with just
right.
one pass. And unfortunately, they don't have that right now. But I think even if they did have that available with the reservation system, that would be an even complete cluster, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
and that's where that pass benefited me, because I could come and go as I please on both coasts, but there was no reservation system.
Yeah, and that's where the valuation changed a lot, and that's why I kind of told people, I was like, yeah, the price is a little bit lower, but understand that the valuation's completely changed because now you're predicating that value on access instead of just 365, right? 365,
Exactly.
that's a no brainer, right? And you could just price out per day or whatever and get yourself down to really low numbers or whatever. But it's now access. How much access am I getting for that 1400 or 1300 or whatever? And that changes the game entirely, because now you're trying to get access just like everybody else is who have paid into the system, and that's kind of why that lawsuit is out there, is because it's like we don't know quite what we're going to get on the back end.
Right.
You could get 90 days of access and be all good. Or you can get maybe 10 days of access, 15 days of access, especially when you consider travel and flights and stuff and having to arrange all that kind of stuff, and now you're in the red. So it's just one of those, it's just kind of one of those things. I think honestly, for your position, I would just skip passes. I would just skip annual passes on both coasts. In my personal opinion. Now,
Yeah.
again, you're gonna have to kind of figure out, is there ever a time when I might go for longer in a year, And do I necessarily want that pass to be available for me in order to do that, right? And that's kind of something you're gonna have to weigh. I think annual passes will come back at the appropriate time, but then who knows what values they'll have later on and stuff like that. I think these passes are kind of gone, so they can be reformatted at some point.
Yeah,
And that's
I
going to
agree.
change the situation further. So it's like, do you
Yeah, see,
necessarily want to buy into that system?
in a few years, I'm going to be a Florida resident. See, now if I was going to be moving a little
Ah,
bit
okay.
sooner, see, now if I was going to be moving a little bit sooner, then that would be no questions asked. I'll keep my pass. But to
Oh,
be
yeah, that's
able to,
true.
but I'd be having to pay on something that I'm essentially still not using each year up until I move. So
Mm.
it's like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Oh man, that's okay. Now we're. Remember that caveat
Yes.
I mentioned before? Ah, crap. Now that caveat's coming into play. Yikes. Okay, so Magic Key, I think I'd scrap it. Scrap the Magic Key because it's just that's a
Right.
lot of money. That's just a
Right.
huge amount of money, and it's who knows what that system will be, and just scrap it. But when it comes to Walt Disney World,
So do you think that would be more so to kind of not necessarily say sacrifice the almighty dollar, but for a few years up until the fact of moving?
okay, so when are you gonna move? Like, when are you thinking?
It would probably be 2024, 25.
Okay, so you're talking like this year. It's going to be 2022. Let's say 2025. So you're talking like 3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just say three
It would
times.
basically be almost 3 years close to the date because we'd be moving in the summer.
Yeah. Then yeah. So then times
Now,
three of
annual
that.
passes, I'm for sure, but I would hope, would think that it would be up and running by that point. Now, well, I guess can't really,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to believe anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
are there any passes that are still available right now that are like that you can get that aren't taken off as completely sold out?
For Walt Disney World.
Yeah, do you know that?
I don't. I thought they only limited the top two, but they may have limited
And
all of
that's
them.
the Incredipass and I forget the other. I got all the names all mixed up compared to it being a pass and a key.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So let's compare here. So they have the Incredipass, Sorcerer Pass, Pirates Pass, and Pixie Dust Pass. I know a lot of people who have the Sorcerer Pass in Florida, actually, so that's interesting. And they like it. And it looks like the Pixie Dust Pass is available for $3.99. And that gives you, I think,
I
that's the
think
Florida
that
resident monthly pass.
yeah, that's the Florida one, and I think that it's block out dates for the weekends because I think my cousin has that one, and they can only go on weekdays.
Okay. Well, would that be something that you'd be okay with?
I'd be okay with. I mean, because a lot of times weekends are more packed anyway. So if it was me, I'd probably avoid the weekends.
Yeah. I know it's changed a little bit with the reservation system. They've kind of spread out those crowds amongst the week, but whatever. It's
Yeah,
I think those rules still apply even infrequently. Okay. To keep the passes, to keep the pass, I think you said you had three Incredipasses amongst the three of
right
you.
now I just have one. It's just me that has the pass.
Oh,
By the
okay.
time I went to go get Jess and Josh the passes, they discontinued them.
Ugh. Okay. All right. So, but it's just you.
It's just me.
Okay. So that's a little different. So to keep it for 3 years, you're talking about like a little under 4, and that's not counting inflation, which you know will happen.
Exactly.
We know those passes will go up eventually, right? So we're talking less than 5,000 to keep that for the 3 years that it'll take to get there.
Let's see. What? It was like, say, so 3 years. Yes, it'd be $3,496.98.
That's probably going to be a little close. That's probably going to be past 4 if they increase these prices. Which,
But here's the thing, though. That is less than what I paid for the hotel for the 2 weeks I'm staying there this coming June. Disney, you're not making it easy for me.
No, not making it easy at all. This is a tough thing here. I know how frequently you go, and I know how you like your options.
Yes.
You like to have options. Man, as hard as it, I don't like it. I don't like it, but you might have to eat it, buddy. You might have to eat it.
You think I should bite the bullet?
Okay, so when is your renewal date?
September 18th. No. Sorry. That was my magic key. July 1st. So essentially, I would need to renew at the very end of this vacation.
Well, okay. You could approach it like this. From now until that renewal date, see if the highest tier passes become available again. And, if they do, then okay, well then I'll have to wait a little bit, but they'll become available.
Right.
And so you might be able to get a Pixie Pass for the time and then be able to move up, right, when they do become available. But if they don't, you might have to renew. Just because you could keep that pass at least when you get to Florida, and you will have paid out all that money in order to benefit from that. It sounds like a weird thing, but it's like, if you don't do that, I don't want you to be disappointed, George, of not having that when you
right.
when you
But then if I move, then I'm going to really be forking out the money, because then I'd have to be buying ticket after ticket after ticket if it's not back online. I mean, then again, they do have the lower tier.
Yeah, they have the lower tier, but
yeah,
it's like, do you necessarily want to take that chance?
Yeah.
And it's like, you have it. You have the golden ticket now.
Yeah.
And it's like, does it make sense to let it go just to save $600 a year or whatever? George, I'm sorry, man.
Yep.
you might have to eat it. I don't like it. It makes me feel dirty. But
I think this is where a lot of people are in this situation right now. It's like, I'm assuming I'm not the only one that they're really decisive about whether or not. But as I said, I think mine is a little bit more of a sticky situation, since I'm going to be a Florida resident. So that's where it would probably benefit.
So I think I can reasonably say, just kind of working it out, having time to think about it a little bit, I think you might have to hold on to it. As unfortunate as that might be, you might have to hold on to it. And I think there might be times when you might go a little bit more. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, there is, especially when Tron opens.
Yeah, okay. So if you do end up going, then you would have at least been close to maximizing that delta, that price gap, right? Between just buying tickets and having an annual pass. You might lose out on some of that cash, but you can kind of make it up through discounts and stuff like that. On merch and food and stuff like that. But at least you would have retained it, no matter what market conditions are going on, for when you actually move down there. And I think that might be the best way. Because here's the thing. It's not just a decision you have to make for right now, or for this year, or before the next trip. It's a decision that will come into effect years from now.
Gotcha.
And it's like, that's kind of what you have to weigh out there. And I'm glad you forwarded that information, because that is something that you have to really take into account nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad I was able to add that into the conversation because, as I said, I was going back and forth. And I think, this is a really good conversation to have because a lot of people don't know what to do. And as much as I'm a huge Disney fan and, I cover all the Disney news and everything, the announcements, the rumors, what have you, there are times where it's like it's a stick in the mud sort of kind of notion of whether or not, which way should you go? Because once you make that decision, it's all said and done. And I think a lot of times, even us Disney fans, how we took the parks for granted, we all took the annual pass system for granted. We always thought it was going to be this well-oiled machine that just kept on going and it wouldn't stop. It wouldn't, it would always be there. But unfortunately, right now, that's not the case.
It's not. And on, we got wind of it with FlexPass. If you remember that program that Disneyland, debuted a couple of years ago, before the events of 2020. That was kind of the canary in the coal mine kind of thing. That was the precursor. That was the thing that should have gotten all the antenna shot up and said, if this might be a system that they want to move all the passes to eventually. Yeah. And they did. And for better or for worse. That's what they did. That's the decision that they've made. Does it work like how they intended? I don't think so. And they might be rebooting those systems as time goes on. And that's the other thing you kind of have to take into account too. It's like, well, if I marry myself to this, hopefully this pass doesn't change again to where now I really don't want to have it, But I think you can take that gamble for at least maybe one more year and just kind of see. And kind of find that out. I think in Disneyland, I think that's a system that they're gonna maybe change to to an extent that far surpasses what they might do in Walt Disney World. But and that's why Disneyland is like, I don't think anybody wants to be necessarily married to that system right now in its current form, but feel that they have to, because if they don't, they might lose out on privileges and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to weigh, and it's a lot of money. It is. I mean, it's but like you said, that's less than you shell out for a hotel room on this latest trip. Yeah, which is significant, and if you can forward that amount of money to at least hopefully maintain these perks when you actually go down there in Florida, it might be a worthwhile gamble from that standpoint.
Okay. So I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Would you ever consider becoming an annual pass holder again on Disneyland's side if and when the system gets fixed? Like, what would be your breaking point to say, X, X, and X will get me to renew my pass again?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and it's one that I've thought of every once in a while. Like, what would it take for me to actually be an annual pass holder again, at least for Disneyland? Given that we're closer than you are maybe to Walt Disney World, right? Right. And so those costs and challenges are a little bit different on our end than they may be on yours. I think honestly, like, I kind of think myself, the reservation system would have to step away completely in order for me to even look that way, because the management that is required to actually even make a vacation, because think about it, Magic Key's only affording you 6 days. Yeah. If you want to go for any longer than that, or if you are kind of managing your bookings around hotel stays and you can't secure those days around your hotel visits, especially with the infrequency that we go and how close we may book vacations close to that date, those reservations might not be available at all, even though that we have time off from work collectively as a family, and we have the hotel accommodations available.
Right.
Just because we have those two things in place doesn't mean necessarily you're going to get access to the park. You have to go one more step. And that's just one step too far for me to even look that direction. So unfortunately, until that situation's resolved, and maybe they can do it to where, hey, if you're out of state, maybe you don't have to contend with the reservation system as strict as a local. Maybe they can do something like that.
Yeah.
You know?
That's interesting.
Right? Maybe we accommodate, maybe we put you in a different bucket where you're not fighting with every single annual pass holder or magic key holder on the system in order to facilitate trips on a semi-regular basis. That's always kind of why it was bizarre for me to think that it's like, and I kind of understand why they do it now, but I was like, why don't they have annual pass holder payments available for people that are out of state rather than in state? It seems like you want people out of state to have annual passes more than you might want to necessarily have people in state to have annual passes because of the, at least for Disneyland, because of the local annual pass holder population just bum rushes that park every single day.
I always question that too. Like I'm thinking like when they say, oh, I'm a Florida resident or I'm a California local or Southern California local. It's like, oh, I could go on a payment plan. Well, it's like, I think it'd be a much bigger of a stretch to have, as you had mentioned, out of state people, because it's more of a challenge for them to, not know if they can get work off or, if flights are decently priced. So, yeah, I would think that would be all the more to Disney's benefit to do it that way. Exactly.
You have that. My idea is increased accessibility for entry for the people out of state, your domestic and international tourists. That way, you're taking one thing off in order to entice more visitation for them, who are going to spend more money anyway. They're not gonna go into the park just to buy a popcorn bucket, or they're not going to go into the park just to hang out. They're going to spend money and to take advantage of all the resort has to offer. So that's why I always was like a little bit like, what? Apparently, well, from what I've heard, is the reason they don't do that is because you can easily start that payment process system and then stop it as soon as you go on your trip. And they don't want that. But I think that would kind of work itself out, right?
I would think so.
Because if you do that, then it's like, oh, well, you can never get this again.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. I never really understood that. I always thought that they did that kind of backwards.
There's ways to figure it out. And the fact that they don't do that is weird. Because even like you, George, it's like, George would like to go to Walt Disney World as much as possible, and to do it to where he can, maybe make it a little bit affordable for himself just to walk into the door and pay the fees and things associated with the actual travel and staying there and whatever. But the barrier to entry might keep you from going down as regularly as you normally would. And you're keeping George from spending that kind of money in your parks because of that, right?
And George doesn't like that.
George doesn't like that. I can tell you right now, D23 doesn't like that, right? So that was kind of always my kind of thing. It's like, make it easier for your international and domestic tourists to go. And
that would be
harder.
A no-brainer for me. That would be an absolute no-brainer for me, because that would make my monthly payment $105.47. I wouldn't even have to think about it twice to say, you know what, I'll just keep renewing it for however. It could take me 7 years before I move. I'll still keep renewing my pass.
Right, and they're not having to deal with you on that monthly basis. It's kind of free money, because it's like, you're only going to go down there probably maybe 1 or 2 times 1 to 3 months out of the year. Sorry about that. I completely screwed that up. You're only going to go down there 1 to 3 months out of the year, but you're paying them for 12 months out of that year.
Yeah.
That seems like a win-win. I don't know why they can't work that system out. I would say your efforts on monetization of the parks maybe need to be directed towards figuring that out, because that seems to me like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
And honestly, if they were gonna, and being that these passes aren't available right now, I kind of wish and hope that's what they're working on when they bring them back online.
Yeah. Or even just like, hey, guess who can buy these passes? People who are out of state.
Yeah.
right? Because
And
that population
those are the
can't be
people
that
that they want
large.
anyway.
Yeah.
Those are the people they want anyway. They're trying to really push for domestic travel and families to come on vacation. Then
Right.
why not do that way?
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's just it really is unfortunate how that can't be worked out in a way that allows for more accessibility and via a payment option for domestic and international travelers than the reverse how it's set up right now. You're allowing locals to access the park at a disproportionate rate than domestic and international travelers. I mean, it's and I understand it's based on proximity, but understand also that if somebody that's a domestic traveler or an international traveler can kind of get into their minds like, hey, look, they're incentivizing me to go, they'll go. But you're almost de-incentivizing them to go because they don't have the same. You're not affording them the same level of access that you are to locals. It's backwards.
Yeah,
It
is. It really is. And something of that they have these big people, sitting in a conference room with a long table and leather chairs, and they're probably like they're calculating, oh, we got to like take it down to this and that and this and that and that, and it's like it's so simple. It's you don't even need the basic math. It's like it's right there in front of you.
And they have like loyalty programs for cruisers, for cruise lines, right? If you go on so many cruises, you get certain perks. Disney Cruise Lines, I believe, has this where you go on so many cruises, you're like a silver cruiser or a gold cruiser or a platinum cruiser or something like that. It's something like that, right? And you get a certain amount of perks with that. And it's all about incentivizing those people who have gone before to go again.
Exactly.
Right? Well, apply that same kind of mentality, but via a different method for your parks, and they don't do that, and
either
I'm really not sure why.
Yeah, they don't do that either coast.
That's a shame. It's a shame. I do apologize, George. I was hoping that I could make it a little bit more simplistic for you, but unfortunately, I added layers of complexity onto the whole thing that may have, I may have mucked it up a little bit, and I do apologize. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I think I'm a very spontaneous person.
Yeah.
I do think that once I'm down there, because that's when I'll have to renew it anyway. I just think when I see my moment, that's if I take it, then that's probably when it'll happen.
Yeah. And if you are spontaneous, well, you're spontaneous now, you'll be spontaneous later. You can feed that spontaneity now, right? Going to Walt Disney World throughout the year. I mean, let's say you want to go on a weekend, right? And you just want to pay that $90 airline fee, go down there, maybe in a junk hotel room or something like that, and go to Walt Disney World. Well, you have your pass, and that's what that affords you to do. That's the whole part of why you have it. You can maintain that spontaneity now while affording you that spontaneity in the future. And I think that's the difficulty with where you're at right now, because you don't quite know if those services are going to be there when you actually move down there. And the only way you can really, the best way you can guarantee that is if you renew.
Yeah, if I just keep what I have.
Sorry, George.
You're good. And actually, I want to go back and forth with this because it's like once I make that decision, it's like it's locked in. Unfortunately, it's like it's the way of the system right now. I mean, like with reservations and hotel accommodations and flights and dining, it's like everything you need to know what and this is the whole picture of what people, speaking of spontaneity, that people can't do on the fly anymore with Disney.
I
You
know.
have to know we're talking about my annual pass of what I'm going to be doing 3 years from now.
Isn't it crazy?
3 years that I have to make a decision about my past now, not
Mhm.
knowing where it's going to lead us 3 years from now. That never happened with Disney. You can
Never.
go literally that day if you wanted to and not have to worry about it.
And this is also why, George, I mean, I understand that your scenario might be very specific to you. I'm not saying that nobody else is doing what you're doing. Probably many people are kind of weighing out
Oh,
these
yeah.
things like you are, right? But this is why a lot of people, whether they're in your position or not, are going to Universal or Knott's Berry Farm in my particular case, right? For Universal Studios Florida, it's like I have to pay, it's a fraction of what Disney's charging, and I get how much access, and I get Express Pass after 4 p.m. and all these other benefits and whatever. Maybe it's 1 p.m. I
It's
don't
basically,
know. But,
I think for Universal Orlando, I correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's it's half the price of what an Incredit Pass is.
right. And guess what? You don't have to deal with the reservation systems. So for a lot of people, it's like, that's an attractive thing. I know for myself personally, that's why we bought into Knott's. We don't really plan on going to Knott's all that much, especially from Arizona. But when you tell me that whenever I'm in California, I can just show up at Knott's Berry Farm, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get it because it's like a fraction. It's a little over $100 for 365 days of access, and I don't have to deal with the reservation system. For me, sign me up, and that's what we
a done
did.
deal.
Yeah, and Knott's, which by the way, I don't know if you're gonna have time on this trip to actually go to Knott's, but I'd love to take you if we can while you're down there in June. We'll talk about it. But it's like, yeah, okay, so it doesn't have nearly the amount of entertainment and attractions that Disney has, but it's so much simpler of a system, and that simplicity has value as well. And especially if you're going to give it away, essentially, for a couple of prices, a couple of parking fees, essentially is what they're giving it away for. Well, then, yeah, that's what I'm going to do, because it's just simpler. It's just easier. I don't have to think about it. Whenever I'm in California, I can come in Knott's for at least for a little bit. Watch the entertainment, the live entertainment, which they have a plethora of. and take advantage of that and ride an attraction or two and leave. And I didn't have to deal with a calendar that, by the way, isn't incorporated into the app. You have to go through the website to do it. It's this whole convoluted thing. I didn't have to do any of that to get access. I just show up, just like the good old days. And I think that right there, that value's just, it's through the moon right now, especially when when it's related to Disney.
Yeah, I agree. And I think these other companies are kind of using that to their advantage against Disney, because it's like whatever Disney is doing, they're pretty much saying, let's do the complete opposite so we could get more of their people on our side. Now's our time to really showcase that. And the second, as you had mentioned, once there's something that is non-existent to a reservation system, people are going to be all for it.
Yeah, and they are. And those parks right now, Universal, Studios Hollywood at least, and Knott's Berry Farm, they're packed. They are packed. And guess what? They don't have to deal with the reservation system. They don't have to have operations cast members dealing with that whole thing and adjusting values and adjusting buckets and stuff like that and maintaining a whole server apparatus dedicated to reservations. They don't have to deal with that. They don't have to deal with lawsuits. They're open, and because they're open, people are like, hey, I can't get into Disney, I'm going to go there. That's what they're doing, and it's a smart play. And not only, and you can add in the fact that if they were to implement a reservation system, they don't have nearly the kind of demand or kind of
the complications.
They don't have the loyalty that Disney fans have in order to
gotcha. Yeah.
In order to go through with it,
they don't have the baggage.
Right. They don't have the loyal fan base that will take all of those things. They don't. So for both those reasons, they've done away with the reservation systems, and they're benefiting a lot from it. And at least right now, I I know the reservation system is part of their yield management strategies. I know it's part of their labor problems that they have right now.
But do you really feel like deep down it's unnecessary?
Deep down, I feel it is unnecessary as a blanket policy. Now, if you want to apply a reservation system during particular seasons or only with, magic keys or annual passes or, any number of those combination of things, then maybe it might be appropriate. But for as it stands where I'm at with it, I'd rather have no reservation system than a reservation system, if only because of the PR nightmare and the management and overhead that it costs to actually maintain a system like this. But I understand it's an operational reality because of the current market and because of labor and because they have to contain costs right now because they just endured so much debt and liquidity issues from the events of 2020 on. So I understand that. I get that. I get why they do it. But this whole show is in part dedicated to this for a reason. And it shouldn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
I'd much rather be talking about all kinds of other stuff when it comes to Disney, but this affects so many people that you kind of have to.
Yeah.
And should be that way.
It's unfortunate. It really is. And then you have Genie Plus that just adds a whole nother layer onto that.
Oh, God. Genie Plus. Genie Plus. I swear, okay, so let's have this conversation real fast.
All right. Let's have it.
We might as well. Let's kick this thing off to an hour. So before we get into the issue of Genie Plus itself, do you feel that they could have gone away with just keeping the Fast Pass branding?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like they have all this technical lightning lane type of thing. Just why would you spend money to replace all those signs, all the signature, signage that leads to, call it lightning lane with Genie Plus, individual lightning lane. It's Fast Pass. That's just call it what it is. And even honestly, even with the annual passes, now like for Disneyland, you're a magic key holder, or if Disney Worlds, you either have an Incredipass Pass or a Sorcerer Pass or a Pixie Dust Pass. It's like, I liked it when it was just annual pass, signature annual pass, just simple.
And I think they went with the rebranding effort on both those things, by the way. I'm glad you brought this up because they are interrelated. I think they went with the rebranding because these products were so different from the previous, right? Fast Pass was a free thing, whereas Genie Plus is not. Magic Key did have reservations, while annual passes did not. Incredipass Pass has reservations attached to it, whereas Signature Plus or whatever the equivalent for Walt Disney World is, I can't remember at this point, but it didn't, right? And I think they wanted to rebrand them in order to make it very clear that these things were different products.
Well, and look at the lawsuit that they're having now with the Magic Key holder, because just with certain little wordings,
right, that they carried over from their previous system, so they didn't even rebrand to the extent that they should have, which is ironic. That's true though, right? Because they didn't rebrand those sectors, people were miffed, and that's where you get this lawsuit here. So one could make the argument that, yes, they had to rebrand in order to put it out there in the minds of people that these were different products. The problem is that they've rebranded so far away from their previous branding that now it's like people are unbelievably confused about what these are. My feeling is like Fast Pass Plus was being used as a brand, but couldn't you do like Fast Pass Deluxe or something?
Oh, absolutely. No, I have to admit, as much as, I've never personally tried Genie Plus yet, but
okay.
I possibly may, just for the heck of it, just for research purposes, when I go down to Disney World, because, just to see.
Yeah.
But I was not a fan of Fast Pass Plus. When they got rid of
a lot of people weren't.
when they got rid of the paper kiosks at Walt Disney World, and it went to Fast Pass Plus, where it only allotted you 3 Fast Passes a day per park, or if you had a park hopper at the time, you're still allotted 3 Fast Passes, and then after a certain time, whatever was left, if there were any openings, then you can get another one.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of that whatsoever. Now, when I came out to Disneyland, I loved Max Pass. If they could have incorporated Max Pass anywhere, everywhere, even if they were to add an additional fee, Max Pass was so simple. It was basically taking the paper kiosks and making it digital right on the app, right on your phone.
Yeah. And a lot of people love that Max Pass service. Now, I wasn't quite a fan of it because I was like, this is not an area where I would like to have the parks monetized. But now I kind of understand why they did that, because of the accessibility of an app-based system. It would completely overrun the system had you not had a paid portion to it. So I kind of understand. I get it. Whatever. But a lot of people did like Max Pass, especially Walt Disney World as you visited Disneyland. And I think they wanted to do that with the new system. The problem was they rebranded it completely, so it essentially was that, but with some quirks that have now made it to where, gosh darn, I mean, it is an inferior product to it in a lot of ways, right? So Max Pass used to give you, access to these things, not just limited by one. Like I think right now with Genie Plus, right, you only get one of those rides. You can only ride those rides once via the system.
I believe
right?
so. Yes. Yeah. If you buy the $15 per person per day, there's a way that you can overlap them depending on the time frame. Like if you book your Fast Passes really early in the morning, then that could allot you to expand your whole day where you could have one kind of overlapping the other. But once you make that Fast Pass for that particular ride, then if you want to go on it again, you have to use the standby. If I understood that correctly.
I think you're right on that. Yeah, Walt Disney World system is so convoluted. It really is.
Yeah.
I think Genie Plus, I think it works out better at Disneyland simply because you don't have to front load all those reservations like you do in Walt Disney World.
Well, and you also have to think too, with each Walt Disney World park, there's fewer attractions. So if you have one major popular attraction,
right,
and you have just say 5,000 people going there that day, guaranteed majority of the 5,000 people are going to go towards that one major attraction. So if you're not on the app early in the morning to book your Fast Pass, then
I think you're right.
You're kind of screwed there. But what I think is also kind of somewhat crappy, I believe, you would have to pay for the service first in order before you book it. So if you pay your $15 per person and you try to hurry up and you book your Fast Passes and there's nothing left, I believe they have it in there that they
all sales are final. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. No refunds, no givebacks.
I think one of the strategies when it comes to Walt Disney World's Genie Plus service is that depending on how the lines shape out to be that day, it might be in your best interest to hold off on your Genie Plus purchase until you kind of know where the lines are going to be, where the lines are. Does it make fiscal sense in order to get on the service and kind of have some assurance that those Max Pass, Genie Plus reservations are going to be available, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of all those things into account. Risky. But I think at Disneyland, I think it works a little bit simpler in that you don't have a lot of front loading that you do at Walt Disney World. And so that's going to be interesting. If you could So you're going to take advantage of Genie Plus
I am
at
going to
Walt Disney
take
World?
advantage of it more so just for my own personal research, so I can
Okay.
come back and have a discussion with you fellas of my findings of what, because I'm going to do 3 days of Magic Kingdom
Right.
and 3 days of Hollywood Studios. So the first day of each park,
Hmm.
I'm not going to use Genie Plus. I want to
Okay.
scope out everything. I want to get the lay of the land more so. What are the wait times like? Then on day two of that park, I'm going to use Genie Plus and see how that runs.
Would you consider doing a similar scenario at Disneyland?
Yes.
Okay. Because
Yep.
not a lot of people have commented on the various systems, how they compare on the various coasts. And that might also be an extra layer of like, hey, maybe what I did at Walt Disney World worked better than Disneyland, and or vice versa, depending on how that works out. I think that'd be an interesting conversation when you actually partake in that. I
And
know
it's
I'm gonna, yeah,
oh no, I'm sorry. And I was going to say, and this is all going to be on the same trip too.
right,
So they're not
yeah,
even they're not even going to be like different time frames.
exactly,
It's literally going to be one resort after the other.
100%. And so the comparisons to draw between them are more applicable because of that, right? Because
Yes.
you're essentially doing it at the same time. I think I'm gonna. I think I might. I might. I think on this trip, I'm still weighing on whether or not we're gonna actually do Genie Plus. But I think I might do it with you and kind of see it and tag team it
Nice.
and see if it'll work out. So we'll see. We'll see how that works, and we'll report back to the viewers watching here on how well that did work.
Yes.
I think that'll be very interesting. But I don't know. I think we covered it.
I
I
think
think we
so.
covered it here.
I think we did.
Um, do you wanna take us out?
Yep, absolutely. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's a little different conversation we had than our typical. We usually do a more of a like report news based type of thing, but I think it was kind of nice to actually incorporate our own personal
Yeah,
um, ways of how we vacation at the House of Ma, so to speak. And this kind of will set the stage for when we actually do go on our trips, that we could come back and have another lengthy conversation to compare and contrast to see what works and what doesn't. Because only here on Orange Grove 55, we give you the honest to God Almighty truth.
yeah, exactly right. And no, we'll break it down. We'll and I like having these conversations in front of the viewers because it's what we would be doing, through a phone call or whatever communication that we choose, right? Just not in front of the public like this. But I think it really is valuable for people going through the same decisions, what our decision process might be. How we get to those decisions and what
Absolutely.
factors we take into account and not. I think it is valuable. I think it really is. So I really do appreciate you wanted to have this conversation online because I think it is fascinating. I think it is extremely valuable.
Absolutely.
So hopefully you viewers got something out of it. Again, if you want to interact with me, you can do that on Twitter right there. Just how it's spelled at Vash Sky right there. For all the robust conversation, as Christine Wasteland McCarthy would actually put it. I think she said like robust like 4 times on the last quarterly earnings call. I thought it was pretty funny. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice and news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. So that is where you can find me, right there. Listen, I had a great time on this show. I think our viewers had a great time, and if you did like it, go ahead, go down there in the comments. Tell us what you think. Please hit that subscribe button for more content like this. I think it was extremely beneficial. And I know we'll have some very very good content to come. I can assure you of that. And yeah, if you really like it, share it with friends or family and or different message forums or Twitter and stuff like that. We'd love to get people onto the show as well. So George, I think that's it.
Absolutely. And for all of you watching out there, with the comments, if you've had any experiences with Genie Plus, Lightning Lane, your annual passes, Magic Keys, anything that we discussed it today, you want to add your input, you want to add in your opinion, your thoughts, your take on it. As Mr. Vashkai has said, we'd love to hear from you. Again, I'm George, host of Citrus Corner here on Orange Grove 55. And as always, you all have a magical day.